Well, good morning and welcome to another week of Journey with Christ. I'm your host, Mark Mitchell, preaching minister here at the Park Avenue Church of Christ in Charleston, West Virginia. And I'm joined, as usual, by our resident expert, Steve Fox. How's it going today, buddy?
Capital R, capital E, resident expert.
R-E.
Now, we had a great week at our church where Mark and I both go to. We had several visitors because it was Father's Day, and with those several visitors plus our own people, we had the most in attendance as we've had since the virus started.
We had one other Sunday where we had more than
that.
But it was another visitor situation.
Well, we had visitors from
because we hit 60 one Sunday.
Father's Day, and there was a young man in our congregation who his daddy baptized him. I think Asher's 12. And it reminded me when I was 12, when I was baptized, and I didn't come up. Well, that might not be a good example, but it was a very good service, and it just makes you feel better when you look out there and see 3/4 of the congregation filled up instead of two people sitting there looking at you.
I actually thought, if I'd have had the voice yesterday, I might have tried to lead a few songs yesterday because we had the numbers to pull it off.
Yeah, good.
But it was a great day. Saturday night, for those of you who have not made game night yet, I can't tell you what a fun evening that was.
It was a lot of fun. Game night. Game night was really, really fun. I won $45, so
I told
take
somebody
advantage of those little kids that want.
I told somebody, if somebody walks by and hears all the laughing and commotion going on in here, they're going to think, okay, where did the church move to? Because who's having fun in that place?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was
it's
boisterous.
It's such a refreshing idea because some of us grew up in an environment where Christianity didn't have anything to do with that being fun. If it was fun, it wasn't Christian.
Yeah. In fact, I remember hearing one of the leaders of a congregation says, if that's the only reason you're coming because it's fun, you've messed up. So,
yeah.
But no, and we had a great bunch of kids that night, and now I've even heard, as I shared with you, there are more interested in coming because the thought of doing those kind of things appeals to them. And we've got a few that are just absolutely missing out right now, and I'm going to be talking to them. But, yeah, it was a great weekend all around.
Well, as long as the kids promise me, make an ardent promise to me, that I don't have to play Monopoly or Yahtzee, I'll be back. I know there are people in the world that love those games. I'm not one of them.
Well,
even though I did roll a Yahtzee 6, and the people at the table that I was playing with all went crazy. I didn't even know what I did. I rolled 6 sixes, and they say that's rather unusual.
Kelly says she has the picture.
Did she take a picture of it?
Yeah, of you when you said, "Hey, I finally won a Yahtzee."
Yeah.
Well, anyway, it was a great weekend. If you remember, for the last several weeks, and again, I apologize for being very sporadic this summer, but I've had, between Steve being out of town, I've had things going on in my life, and then last week, I had computer problems, but they seem to be resolved. We hope they are. But a few weeks ago, we started a study on in Mark 10 about who decides, who has the authority to tell us the various things that we want to know and that come up in life. I don't know if you've ever been, well, I know you've been to business meetings. And the idea of
That
what
makes Monopoly look pretty good.
yeah, it makes Monopoly look real good. The idea of who decides what is wrong is sometimes thought that it happens in a business meeting. But you brought up a great point from the very beginning, is the fact that we have to go to the book to find the authoritative reasoning behind it. Anything and everything that we do.
And the examples that we looked at in the past few weeks was marriage and divorce. There are some typical ideas that Jesus spoke about marriage and divorce that didn't fit the same context as what the Jews were teaching about divorce. And we also looked at possessions. Jesus didn't look at possessions the way the people were looking at possessions. Authority was a big one like that. Jesus' concept of authority was totally different than what the Pharisees and Sadducees looked at. And what we're going to look at today, the first one we're going to look at today is, can you remember any of the other ones we saw?
Well, we had marriage and divorce, authority, possessions, is based on what people say and what Jesus says.
Yes.
The ideas.
And the next one we're going to look at is, both of these are in Mark 10, and beginning at verse 13, Mark writes about an event that took place where the disciples were not very happy with Jesus, and he was rebuked because they rebuked the people because the people were bothering Jesus.
Right.
Yeah. Do you want to read that, or you want me to read it?
Go ahead.
And they were bringing children to him that he might touch them, and the disciples rebuked them. But when Jesus saw it, he was indignant, and said to them, "Let the children come to me, do not hinder them, for to such belongs the kingdom of God. And truly I say to you, whoever does not receive the kingdom of God like a child shall not enter it." And he took them in his arms and blessed them, laying his hands on them. So in the first part of the paragraph, we got, hey, leave him alone, he's a busy man, he doesn't have time to fool around with these kids. I don't know if you ever heard this in your house, but I heard it a lot. Children should be seen and not heard. That's exactly the opposite of what Jesus said. Okay, the kids are going to go over there and sit there for an hour and not move and not do anything and not say anything. They end up with Jesus holding them, hugging them, sitting on his lap. That's totally different than what...
Well, you know, there's an importance that I think for me, an underlying statement in this thing, not to even discount what really, literally happened here. I mean, there was children that wanted to be close to Jesus, and he said, "I'll let them be close to me." And in fact, as we saw there, he was indignant. He was upset.
There are only a couple times that Jesus gets angry in his ministry. This is one of them.
This is one of them.
When he went in the temple, he wasn't too happy about that either.
Exactly. But the point, there's an even greater point, or a more broad point, that for me, oftentimes I think I know what is the correct thing to have happen. Mm-hmm. But in all honesty, when we go and look, I've probably got it twisted and don't have it exactly the way. I need to make sure I understand what God sees as important as opposed to what I see as important. These disciples had made a rational decision based on the culture that they lived in and the way they saw things. They treated people as important and they weren't to be bothered. And Jesus is basically saying, no, bother me. I want to be bothered by, especially little children. In fact, the reason I say that we use that kind of balance of scales is because Jesus turned the scale over, because he said, unless you become like them, there's no sense even trying to talk to me.
I can't tell you how many times Susie and I have gone to Managua, Nicaragua, and we made a couple trips to Guatemala, where it has nothing to do with you and your value and your sense of what's right and wrong, but it has everything to do with these children that are around you, that are playing games with you, that are doing things that they've never done before and don't have the toys to do that. And you give them stuff to play with and maybe a new shirt or something like that. It's almost impossible to not feel like Jesus when you're in the middle of a ministry which involves a lot of kids.
Well, you quickly find out there is first of all, there's an attachment that happens. We as we become adults, we lose that concept of letting it all out. A child, now it might be from one extreme to the other, but you know which way they're going.
Yeah.
When they don't know, that's when you get worried, or you should get worried, is when they're completely withdrawn, But when a child is happy, you know a child is happy. And when a child is sad, you know when a child is sad. So Jesus is just telling them, be real, in an essence, like the child. Mm-hmm. Don't pretend, be real. Those kids were dying to get next to Jesus.
Well, where I grew up, when I was a little kid, well, I didn't grow up. I got tall there, but I didn't grow up there. The rule was you weren't allowed to jump on the bed.
Yeah.
But when I started having grandkids,
you changed the
rule.
rule?
We were rolling all over my bed. It was a huge, king-size bed, and as I got 3 of them, then 4 of them, then 5 of them, and they got a little bit bigger. It was still all them against me. But, I know some parents, let the kids jump on the bed. Who in the world ever thought of anything like that? Don't run in the house.
Yeah, don't run in the house.
Yeah. There's all kinds of things that, like you said, if you just let it out, it doesn't seem like it's that bad. It's that
well, I mean, I get the idea that there are times that behavior needs to be modified. I mean, like, if we're in worship service, we don't necessarily want the children running up and down the aisles and or jumping on the pews or whatever.
And that goes back to the situation.
It's exactly. But when children they should be able to be what children are meant to be.
And I think there are two extremes to this too. Like if the house catches on fire, you don't say to your child, Ricky, the house is on fire now. You walk out that side door over there, and you won't be bothered.
Yeah.
Nobody says that.
Nope.
They get them out of there as fast as they can. Now, is that breaking a rule? Like a cop,
Might be.
like a cop chasing a bank robber down the road. He's going 80 miles an hour, going 90 miles an hour, and they say, well, that cop, did you see what he did? He broke the speed limit. Well,
Yeah, arrest him.
there was a reason for him breaking the speed limit, a logical reason for him doing that. And that's all the way through life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. In fact,
Jesus even says if you don't become like a child, and there's a whole sermon right there. If you don't like, what do children do that we're supposed to imitate? If you don't become like a child, you'll never be a part of the kingdom of God.
well, they have, when a child loves you, they love you.
Yeah.
And don't care to show it to you.
And he didn't say be
childlike.
Yeah, he said be childlike. He didn't say childish. He said,
Unless you love like a child.
yeah.
Unless your heart is like the child, then you'll never enter it.
So of all the contrasts that we've studied in this series, this is the one that I think probably should get more attention than anything else, because he said, if you don't become like a child, you're not going to make it.
Yeah, and When it comes to our lives and giving authority, and you and I have talked about this several times this past year, as it relates to how we see what's important, cannot be based on what society tells us, what the world tells us, and honestly, it can't be decided by what I want to believe. Because maybe I have a bias in some way that keeps me, let's say children are loud and that bothers me. Well, you know what? I'm going to have to get over it.
Yeah.
It's not my duty to, or not responsibility to, children are to be seen, not heard, you know. No. Deal with it, Mark.
Mm-hmm.
Deal with it, Mark. So,
Yeah.
our next one and our last one in this particular series that we're doing is about blind Bartimaeus. And this is a great story. Steve's got some great points about it. So I'm going to go ahead and read it and let Steve.
Where'd you hear that?
Well, you know, I told you, resident expert, R.E.
Children should be seen and not heard.
Yeah. Chapter 10, verse 46. Then they came to Jericho as Jesus and his disciples, together with a large crowd, were leaving the city. A blind man, Bartimaeus, which means son of Timaeus, was sitting by the roadside begging. When he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout, "Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me." Many rebuked him and told him to be quiet. But he shouted all the more, "Son of David, have mercy on me." Jesus stopped and said, "Call him." So they called to the blind man, "Cheer up, on your feet, he's calling you." Throwing his cloak aside, he jumped to his feet and came to Jesus. "What do you want me to do for you?" Jesus asked him. The blind man said, "Rabbi, I want to see." "Go," said Jesus, "your faith has healed you." Immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus along the road.
What a great story.
It's one of the top 10
Yeah.
as far as parables or stories.
And before we even get into the details of the parable, we need to look at how quickly human beings change. Leave him alone. Don't bother him. Leave him alone. Do not bother him. Hey, get out there. Get out there. Go to him. He's calling you. Man, we change from right to right sometimes, and a lot of times we just change from right to wrong.
Or wrong to worse.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do you think he was sitting by the roadside?
Well, he was begging.
He was begging. People walked by, he'd ask for something. Or,
Alms for the poor.
yeah. Do I give him some money? Do I buy a pencil? I don't know what.
Whatever it may be, yeah.
He was begging and trying to get through the day. Every day.
And again, there is an idea here that this man's worth doesn't balance out with the worth of who Jesus is. And let's just tell the way our society works. Who's in front of the line should be. That's the way our world sees it.
The way our world sees it?
Yeah. The
Probably
best.
the ones who are most powerful and have the most influence.
That's exactly right.
So it would not be children.
It would not be children. It would be someone who's very powerful, whether it's a tremendous amount of wealth or tremendous amount of authority that he has amassed by maybe like a judge or someone of that nature, politics or whatever, or maybe a union boss or someone of that type of status is going to have, he's going to be in the front of the line. And our world looks at people based on what they have, what they can do, and how many people they impact, or how many people follow them. There's actually in social media, they're called influencers. They get special treatment because they can influence a lot of people. Well, blind Bartimaeus has no influence.
None.
He is, in fact, it's not even that he's pitied, but he's pitied in such a way that he is belittled by their pity.
And everybody knows because of their pity that in Bartimaeus' mind, nothing is ever going to change. He's going to die a blind man.
Yeah, and he's going to die a beggar there.
He's not expecting anything more.
He's no more than lint on somebody's clothes. Get off. Jesus comes by and he hears, because he can't see, he hears that it's Jesus. And immediately, do you think blind Bartimaeus had some, because blind Bartimaeus had friends who were in the same boat he was in.
Yeah.
Do you think they ever talked about it? Have you heard about this guy named Jesus?
Well, he learned about it from somebody.
Yeah.
Because he said when he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, so
he got excited.
Yeah, he's got some stuff rolling around up here in his head that this day's going to be different.
This day could be the day that sets all other days apart.
And he's yelling. He's not whispering, come over here.
I know, I really wanted to yell.
You did a good job.
But I wanted to yell because I guarantee you he spoke louder than I just did.
Yeah.
He screamed, Jesus, son of Jesus,
David.
Save it, son of David, have mercy on me. And immediately the crowd starts, many rebuked him, told him, we got the nice version of told him to be quiet.
Yeah,
what do you think they read? Shut up! And for you kids, there's probably not kids watching, so we're good. But he couldn't, just like the child, he couldn't hold back what the possibilities were about to happen to him because of somebody who just walked by. His world could change.
And he wipes out all the adults in one fell sweep. It says Jesus stopped and said, call him. Get him over here.
Get him over here.
Oh, wait a minute. That's not what we thought what we were supposed to do. No, get him over here.
You're busy, Lord. And I got a feeling that it wasn't said like, well, tell him to come on over.
Yeah.
No.
Make an appointment at 11:30.
Yeah, I got a feeling Jesus looked at him, called him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, are you reading me right?
Yeah.
And so he calls him. One of the most difficult questions, and of course, the crowd now, they flip. Now, cheer up. He wants to talk to you.
Uh-huh.
See how lucky you are?
And look how fast they change.
And I've told 100 people, more than that, I've told a bunch of people, this has to be one of the strangest questions in all of the Bible. Unless there's something behind the question.
What do you want me to do for you? Well, I'd like to make $500 a year. I'd like a new house
give me a donation?
down on the... Oh, gee.
I mean,
Like
he's
you
got his
said,
cup with him, you know, he's been begging.
Like you said, might be, and you attribute it to Jesus too, but he must have had some other motive in here in mind, because when he says, what do you want me to do for you? He kind of knows the answer to that.
Well, does he? Let me ask you something. I know people whose lives are a wreck, and they come here at the building and want us to help them.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe our question should be, what do you want me to help you do? Do you want to get out of your drug addictions? Do you want to get out of your poverty? Do you want to get out of Or do you just want me to give you a few dollars so that you can continue right where you are?
So you can do the same thing the next day.
So nothing changes. Is that what you want? Because if that's what you want, we can give you that.
Yeah.
Jesus' question caused blind Bartimaeus to poignantly say, what do you really want from me?
Mm-hmm.
And what he really wanted was, I don't want to be blind anymore.
Because that changes everything else about his life.
Yes.
If he'd asked for a new car or a new boat, or if he'd asked for a new house, or if he'd asked to grow up someplace else besides Jericho, his life wouldn't have changed that much. But Jesus is saying to him, I'm going to give you something that's going to change you radically.
Yeah.
We can start.
Okay.
After Jesus tells him that you can go on your way because your faith has made you well, immediately he received his sight and followed him on the way. The question that should be on everybody's mind as they read this parable is, this is what Jesus taught and this is what human beings believed. And those two things are different. Especially in this case, radically different. Because had he, and I think I asked you a couple weeks ago, I'll throw this out to you again, had he listened to what the world told him, what would have happened that night?
Still been sitting there blind
He'd still be
as a bat.
sitting. That's right. If I listen to the world, it's going to get me in trouble. If I listen to Jesus and his principles and his ideologies, my life is going to be better.
And I think the coup de grace with blind Bartimaeus is he recognized that Jesus could fix his problem.
Mm-hmm.
How many people... Now, Steve, you've been ministering for over 50 years. How many people that's come into you and they want their problem fixed, but their problem can only be fixed by you finding them some money or helping them to get out of trouble with someone that's part of their life, when in all actuality their question should be, as Jesus points out, what do you want me to do for you? Their response should be, I want Jesus to fix my life.
Mm-hmm.
Because ultimately that's what every person who comes to Jesus needs. The question has to be, it can't be, can you take some of these problems I've got in my personal life away? Well, yeah, but I want you to fix my life.
And what kind of problems got you there in the first place?
My decisions.
Yes, and I don't want
my choices.
To deal with that.
Yeah, no,
Won't even want to admit it.
It's actually the culmination of everything that you've been talking about here of authority. It is because blind Bartimaeus comes to the highest authority and wants him to fix the problem of his life.
Go your way, your faith has made you well. So that implies that if he didn't have any faith in what he was asking Jesus
That's right.
to do, he'd been blind the rest
Still
of his
been
life.
blind.
Yeah.
He'd still been blind.
And that's amazing that Jesus can take a little bit of faith and make it so big and so huge that it radically changes people's lives.
Yeah.
We've seen that all the time. Drug addiction, alcohol addiction, people who just don't care whether they're honest or not, people who don't care whether they're greedy or not, because that's the world teaching them something. When we sit down to watch TV and the guy says, you need this car to be happy, we got to figure out, is that right or is that wrong?
We now live in a very dangerous and conflicted world, and our biggest, the major problem we have is nobody is reading their Bible, and all they're doing is watching what the world presents as what's important and what's not important. Mm-hmm. There is no clue as to what and how you should live your life. And I know you've said this, that if people's only experience with God is for 1 hour every Sunday morning, whether you know it or not, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
You're in trouble. Because if you're coming for Steve and I to make your life 10 to 1 better, you're really in trouble.
Well, Kelly and Susie would be in front of the line, wouldn't they?
Yeah, they'd be in front of the line saying, will you help me with my husband?
What do we do with these two morons?
Jesus is the only person, the only authority that we need in our lives. I've told you this, and in fact, you and I talked about it. And I did it. I told you one time, for almost an entire year, I read the Sermon on the Mount almost every day.
Yeah.
Honestly, if you read that, it will change your life.
Mm-hmm.
It will change your life.
Best sermon ever.
Because it
Nothing's even close.
Covers everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it brings out the bottom line point. Who are you going to call on? Who are you going to call on?
And it's so plain in that Sermon on the Mount. I'm glad you brought that out. Jesus was very, very on target when he was saying in that sermon, the world tells you this, or the Old Testament tells you
You've heard it said.
But I tell you this. You've heard it said it's this way. I'm telling you this is the right way.
You still don't see it right.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And it wasn't like the words were inaccurate. Their interpretation of the words was what was inaccurate. God didn't make a mistake in dictating it. They made a mistake in understanding it, you know?
I think I told you this before, but I'm sure this is the first time I've ever repeated anything to you. I said this is the first time I've ever repeated anything.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't hear that.
At a preacher's luncheon, oh gosh, this is 15 years ago, at a preacher's luncheon in Huntington, one of the Huntington preachers was scheduled to speak at our devotional that morning. And Jeff got up and said, I'm going to preach to you the greatest sermon ever. And we all kind of looked at each other like, that's kind of arrogant.
Yeah, well, you know.
And he quoted Matthew 5, 6, and 7.
I know you've told me that, and that is it is without a doubt the best teachings in the entire New Testament as it pertains to what God is looking for in someone's life. You know, I mean, you can't. We talk a lot about the grace and the salvation made available through Jesus, which is something we should be talking about. But on the flip side of that coin, there's a responsibility in the sort of like the blind Bartimaeus statement is, your faith has healed you. What faith was that, Jesus? The faith that he believed I could do what needs to be done in your life. I can fix it. If you show up to Jesus and all you want to do is to get wet, then all you're going to get is get wet. You're going to have to let him have the entire life. Yeah. You can't just come once a week and think this fixes everything, because it doesn't. I'm kind of at the end, but I thought I would let you put in the last words.
Well, the last word that I was thinking about when you were talking just a minute ago, here is a nobody who has in his mind that this man is different. This man is the Messiah. This man can cure me. He has that in his mind. And so he listens to that man because he hears he's coming through town. And he listens to him. nobody else in that crowd that day can heal him and make him unblind.
No.
Make him to be able to see. So that should be, excuse me, that should be our reaction in every decision that we make. What does the world teach us, and are we going to accept that? Or what does the Messiah teach us, and are we going to accept that? Now that doesn't mean you take this, like you said, the Sermon on the Mount. You don't do that in a week.
No.
That's a lifelong pursuit right there.
Absolutely.
When it says, blessed are those who do this, blessed are those who do that, I'm supposed to look at that and say, am I doing that?
Yeah.
Or am I listening to the wrong voices?
Oh. When the world does something to us, we clench our fist, ready to strike, and Jesus says, turn the other cheek. I mean, you cannot it's hard to grasp the idyllic life that Jesus actually wants us to experience. And yet, we won't give him not only the authority of our lives, we won't even give him authority of some of our time. You know? So
I think as an assignment for this week would be go back and look at your individual life and say, what have I allowed Jesus to do with me?
maybe read the Sermon on the Mount would be a good place to start. Just look at it and say, am I letting this determine my actions?
You've heard it said this.
Yeah.
But I tell you, this is the right way.
That's right. And I get that's a perfect place to end.
Yeah.
You've heard that it was said.
You mean me speaking is the perfect place to end?
No, quoting Jesus there.
Oh, quoting Jesus, okay. So I don't have to listen to you.
No.
Thank goodness for that.
Well,
I wonder if these people know we really like each other.
I bet they wonder sometimes.
I bet they're going. Yep.
Well, on behalf of Steve and I, we so appreciate you tuning in. And next week we will begin a new series. So, and Steve will let us know. Well, he'll let me know here next day or so. But I will let you know next.
I can let you know right now.
All right.
We're going to study how people responded to Jesus in the first century.
That's a great topic.
Thank you.
All right. Well, on behalf of Steve and I, God bless. Have a great week.
And happy Father's Day. Happy late Father's Day.
Yeah.